Okay, well, let's get this show on the road. And I'm just going to say, first of all, a big hello to our audience, everyone watching, listening around the world. Liam Hartley back with you today. Another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. Today is episode 442, I think. So, definitely been a while doing this, still loving it, still welcoming the best guests on the subject of which today I'm actually very, very honored actually to welcome
All right.
partner to the show and his cat. We'll find out your cat's name now in a moment.
All right.
Okay, lovely. Well, welcome them both to the show. And today we are going to be talking about John's amazing roller coaster of a life, military experiences, PTSD recovery, message of hope and inspiration to everybody listening to this. As I always say, guys, I'm not telling people how to live or what to do. What I'm trying to do is show people different options that if you're in a position right now where you're thinking, okay, is there a way out of this situation? What do I do? Then hopefully you'll find some relatable tips and aspects in this story. So, John, my friend, thank you so much for this, first of all, and we'll just get that
Yeah,
only bit of the thing is formal, just so people know why we're talking, what we're talking
of
about.
course. Yeah.
But like I said before, just me and you talking now, and
Yeah.
I appreciate
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you for having me on.
that's awesome. I mean, I appreciate you trying this because the thing is as well. Like I was saying before, to speak about your life. I mean, I say this to anybody, even after 400 episodes. I got all the respect in the world for it. I mean, it takes courage.
Okay.
It takes a lot of courage, and obviously, you've served extensively in the military, and I've actually got the list of places here because you've got the Falklands, Afghanistan, Kenya, Grenadier Guards. I mean, you've got some amazing stories, some amazing experiences. But I want to just touch on like your actual inspiration or your motivation for wanting to do that, going right back to the beginning and
Yeah,
wanting
of course.
a military type life.
Well, so I wanted to be a paleontologist in school, funnily enough. And then what actually got me was my brother rejoined the Guards in '98, the Grenadiers. And then I saw kind of like, it looked like he had, money, girls, kind of going all these exotic places. So I was like, you know what, actually, maybe not. And I was a chunky little kid. So it was like, you know what, get fit. And so I started running. And then that's what really took me that way, seeing that and then realizing later that it wasn't all, all parties and traveling to nice places. But that's pretty much the ins and outs. So I jumped off and joined at 16 as soon as I could.
Absolutely. And what was like in terms of a little bit about your background and everything? Where are you
Yeah.
from? Originally? Where did you come from in the world? Which
I'm
part?
from Derbyshire originally, in
Okay.
England, obviously. Yeah, grew up in a little town called Alfreton, little council estate, alcoholic father, bit of an arsehole. Not the worst, but yeah, we left at 8 and went off and yeah, single mom working two jobs kind of thing until eventually, yeah, my brother joined, my sister, they're quite a bit older than me. So they both left, and then it was just pretty much me and mum until I joined the army.
Absolutely. So okay, so then, like you say, you saw your brother, you thought, okay, I want a bit of that. Let's go. Let's give it
Yeah,
everything. Okay. So then, in terms of getting started and everything like this, walk us through. I mean, some people listening to this will know about like the joining, the procedures, won't. So I mean, we probably need to cover
mm,
the size of that technically, but
yeah.
in your experience, in terms of like how you felt in that early phase, like and how you adapted that kind of thing.
There's like a lot of pride really initially when you do it. There's a lot of like, yes, this is amazing. You kind of now looking back, groomed into believing in causes that you may not fully understand at the time. But you get there, like do the recruiting process through the recruiting office. And then I actually got to train on my own. I was very like, I've always been quite a lone person in a sense. So like instead of parents taking me up, I was like, I'm just getting a train. Got on a train, turned up, some random guy in combat was like, right, get on the bus. And yeah, that's it. 6 months training from there. Um, Ups and downs there again, obviously. I think went down from like 48 originally to like 15 actually finishing at that stage. Um, yeah, so it gets pretty intense at times. Looking back now, it doesn't seem like the most intense thing you've done, but at the time, it's very emotional.
Yeah. Emotional. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, this way you said that Vinnie Jones flashed in my head. Then sorry, but I mean, it's been emotional. But no,
Right.
I totally get what you're saying because it is. Do you think it's very young? Because when I'm looking at this now, I know a lot of guys who've been in. Some of them say they're okay with it. I know a few guys who went in, came back out. Went
Yeah,
back at 18 and all this type of stuff. And it's like when I think of like how I was at 16, I was thinking, I mean, it's not easy.
yeah,
People say like you're a man, but you're not. I mean, when I look back, I was definitely a boy. And
yeah.
man and things. Do you feel it's quite young? I mean, no disrespect to
Oh,
you.
no, no, not at all.
I
They're
mean,
like, at the time, you don't. But like my son's 16 now, and I see how he is, and I'm like, he thinks he's a man, but I'm very aware he's not. But like looking back, you kind of see all your experiences as the man you look like now. It's only when you see a photo and you're like, shit. Like I can send you a few after, and like you look at it and you're like, wow, Afghanistan 18, and you look at that and you're like, that's just a child there. So like, while I know they've kind of got to do it a bit, I have a very different view now on it than I did back then, 100%.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, like I say, I got all the respect in the world for people who say anything like that, and I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
does vary. I've seen it vary a lot with the individuals.
yeah.
Um, Now, one of the things I was thinking with this, with the timeline, well, I mean, we'll some deeper subjects, but can you walk us through, roughly speaking, the timeline of your actual military service? Because I know you sent it to me here, and
Yeah,
I will hone in on a couple of
yeah.
specific. But let's have the overview first of the different.
Um, um, 2005, sort of June, I joined. 6 months training, I then left, and in the guards, you go to like an incremental company where you do the drill side of things quite a bit. So I spent a year there in London doing the sort of ceremonial duties. Went to battalion a few months later, so I turned 18 in '06 in the August, deployed to Afghanistan in the March, April 2007. First sort of 6, 7 month tour then. After that, what did I do after that? I think we might have had the Falklands in between there somewhere. Yeah, I think Falklands after, I think, and then another tour, Kenya. The other tour was in 2009 to 10 winter. That's when in fact, I just came off junior Brecon to promote to Lance Sergeant at that time, and then deployed and joined the battalion out there in the December time. So that's December '09 into 2010. Came back to UK, just general training and stuff. Got sent out to Canada as temporary staff for a while on the Rangers. That was interesting. Came back, and then I was posted as an instructor at Catterick for my last for 2 years, and that's where I slipped 3 discs in the most minor, ridiculous way you possibly can, stepping off a bus, like just, and then yeah, that was me. I kind of thought, you know what, I can't stay and carry on this sort of. I can't do the job, so I'm not staying. And by this point, to be fair, I was like seeing a lot more of the politics side. I think I'd grown up a lot over that period, and I was like, you know what, this isn't me anymore. I was a very angry person, to be fair.
Yeah, that is something I will take. One of the things I do with this is I pursue the truth a lot in
Oh
terms
yeah,
of how people
go
feel.
for it.
I mean by no, but I'm just saying what I mean by that is I'm not here to say people should feel this way or that way, but what I have encountered a lot, which I find fascinating in a way, with all respect to that, is people saying, look, what you just said about the politics. Look, I went in with these expectations, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and all this type of stuff. And I've met a lot of guys to the extent where one of these interviews I did a little while ago actually did go so far as to say, in terms of Afghan, no, in terms of Iraq, actually, in his case, I was, I'm proud of how I served. I'm proud of the man I became. I'm proud of the skills and some of these things. But the reasons we were there, I feel a mix. And he was saying he felt some shame, and he went so far. And I was thinking, okay, that's brutally honest, very brave to say. Now, when you are looking at the politics side of, like, and I'd imagine with you, there's a similar type of mix of, like, you're proud of a lot of your achievements, but there's also some things you didn't know at the
Yeah,
get where I'm going. Can we talk about that a little
yeah,
bit?
of course. So really, like at the time, you think you're obviously 18, groomed in, kind of. I'll use the word groomed because you fucking are. But then since leaving and stuff, I kind of looking, obviously the Taliban have taken Afghanistan back. The heroin production is just as rife as it ever was. Like all these things, and you're kind of like, well, what were we really there for? I don't know if this is a factual statistic, but while I was there, I've heard that heroin opium production went up 700% when that was one of the main reasons for going. So that's a load of fucking shit. I'm all right swearing here. So that's rubbish in itself. And
Yeah.
like I think a lot of lads come back with shame, but facing it and admitting it is very tough to like sit there, and you've got to be, you know what, I served my country, I did myself proud. When actually deep inside, I don't think as many believe it as you'd think. And like guilt, not even necessarily over guilt of action, but guilt of not living your life to the best of your ability. So they're the kind of things that I see now. I'm very Tommy Shelby. That I could have threw my medals. If it weren't for my mum saving my medals, I would not give a single shit about it, mate. To be honest, they'd be gone. Don't care. They don't mean anything to me.
Absolutely. I mean, this is part of it because I know, you are very sort of brutally honest about this.
Oh yeah.
And looking at your life, I mean, I can definitely see some things to be super proud of, and I can see some things I have the utmost respect for. But I can also see the other side of it, and I mean, it's good to get that out there because
Yeah.
it's not just about the army, but the concept of conditioning in general. I mean,
Mm.
people need to look at how our culture conditions us, in so many ways, as men, and there's ways it conditions us as men, there's ways it conditions women, there's all sorts of inauthentic things that people,
Excuse me.
media and just forces on people. And I'm very big on stripping that away and finding out
Yeah.
what we really are underneath. And that's the reason for that message. So every question does have a purpose, just so
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I understand.
I'm just saying. So, okay, in terms of those experiences now, I mean, this is going to be a difficult one to condense down, but I'm just going to say,
Yeah.
in terms of some of the crazy experiences you had, I mean, people want to know, and there's probably we could probably be here for like 3 hours, but
Yeah.
condense it down to, first of all, you're not going to want to talk about everything. I
Mm.
respect that. You probably won't
Mm.
be able to talk about everything. I respect that just as much.
Mhm.
But of the things that you can say, could you share with us maybe for one of those, like a couple of the crazy stories, especially for people who are not in the army,
Yeah.
looking, including myself,
Yeah.
outside looking in, thinking, wow, what was it like when things get
Mm.
real and things get,
So, like the one that instantly springs to mind, I was actually on a checkpoint in Garmsir in the Helmand province in 2007. Again, 18-year-old boy, and this sort of bang woke me up, and I was like, "What the fuck is that?" I didn't really realize, It turns out one of the other platoons had gone forward, and at a certain point, they'd been involved in some kind of blast, and one guy died. I think there were 5 lost legs in the same instance. This is pitch black at night, so at the same time, we then like ran down the side. They're being dragged back and like patched up in the middle of the night in pitch black. Obviously, Land Rover lights. That was probably one of the most intense sort of experiences being there and seeing that. What else? That's the worst one there, really. And then some things, it's like not even necessarily when I've been there. So when I was on Junior Brecon the second time, someone's come in, and this was when our regimental sergeant major got killed along with 4 other guys, 2 from the military police and 2 other grenadiers, as well as a lot of injuries. And they've come in and said, "Oh, I need to talk to the 2 grenadiers that were on the course, me and a lad called Paul." Who've gone there. He's like, "Yeah, the sergeant major's dead." And I was like, "Which one?" He's like, "No, the sergeant major, like the fucking boss." We're kind of like, and we're just both like in absolute shock. But even in that moment, then I've kind of gone off to a corner, and they told me about the guys who've been wounded as well. I've gone off to a corner, had a little cry for like a minute, and had to come back and then take a set of orders and go back out into Brecon in the field and just carry on and crack on with things. So they're 2 that kind of stand out. Um, but yeah, this stuff happens all over. There's so many things that it's like, what I'm almost about what can I talk about? Not with you, but I mean in general, because what I mean? I don't want to bring too many people into it, but there's things that you don't see, like the aftermath. Like I know there's people out there whose family have then killed themselves because they can't handle the grief of their son dying, which you never see in the news. You don't see the injuries in the news. You don't see the fact that there's someone that's had there's been something gone wrong medically while they're there being treated that's negligence in a way, and they've come back worse off than they should have been if they've been treated right. So again, I'm not going to go into like names and things because I'm not do that to the families, but it all happens.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at, really. I mean, like I say, it is the things that people don't see. And I do want to shed a light on that because, I mean, again, I mean, like what we were saying earlier, I can see both sides of the coin because, yes, going out there and everything, it is brave and there is the respect. But like you're saying, being 18 and seeing things like that, I do also agree with the idea that, that the old men make the wars and obviously the younger men die in the wars. And it's very, I feel strongly about that because it's like just as a principle, because, I mean, it's more obvious even if you look at, say, America now and you look back, Joe Biden's like 82 or whatever he is.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's like 78, nothing, I'm not saying anything political here. I'm just saying
Of course. Yeah.
they'll sit down and say, look, do we go to war?
Mm.
Do this, do we do that? But then
Yeah.
it's the young men who, end up in these situations. And I feel that that principle really stands out to me, even though it might seem. So,
Right. I will say, sorry, just like come back a bit, but like there are people out there who've done that and should be proud of their actions in the moment, and they are, and rightly so. And yeah, there's some pride there from what I, in a way, but there's also like it's very conflicting. It's like trying to tell yourself you did right in some ways, but in the overall picture, you maybe feel like you didn't, and it's a very conflicting situation to be in. I don't think there's anyone out there that is fully one way or the other. In this ex-infantry, for instance, it's not. No one's out there thinking I did everything perfectly, I did everything really well. I'm really proud of everything. There's a very sort of peaks and troughs mix. So they might feel fantastic about this, but absolutely the worst thing they've ever done about that. And those 2 have got to marry up into one career, and it's a tough one, yeah.
I don't think the media shows that, to be fair. I mean, like you were saying earlier, where they don't show some of those, I don't think the media shows
No.
um, that human side. And it's something, taking this off the army for a minute, it's something I try and do with everything. But so even if you look at, like, I have a lot of athletes on here, as you probably see,
Yeah.
something like that, they are basically dehumanized in a lot of ways, in the sense that people see that as a person
Yeah.
built to perform, to a high level, and it's
Yeah.
and all this, but they take out, look, a tough loss or whatever, they've got to go back to their families, these other people, if there's
Yeah.
haters online, that can affect, like, they could have a kid who's then reading stuff about, like,
Mm.
there's all these other things, and there's
Yeah. It's a lot.
amazing sides of things that you don't see, and like the person they become and the person they grow to be and all of this, but like the other side of it. And to be perfectly honest with you, mate, I'm one of those people where I sit down with people and I kind of feel like some of what they feel, and I get.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm with yourself. I can feel that. I can feel the pride, but it's also, like, the sadness and things that shows, and it's good to get
Right.
sides of that. And I'm going to be straight up with that. But in the aspects that you're the most proud of, though, because that definitely deserves the respect. In terms of the thing on the opposite side of the coin, what we were just talking about, that you feel you did really well, or you look back on it and you think, you know what, I handled that really well, or I did
Mm.
whatever. I don't know. It takes different forms for different.
Yeah.
But for you, what are some of those, like, the more positive takeaways as a person?
I'd say like one of the key things I wanted to do was be an instructor at Catrick. You see when you join, you see that person as your first almost god in a way. You're like, wow, I want to be there. And then when I got there, like despite barriers and stuff that had come in, like just various things, training restrictions, Ofsted inspections, things like that, which should be done. Um, I think that I handled those men or boys well. I wanted them, like, if someone had come to me, whatever time, I need to learn this complex issue because I'm really struggling with it, I would sit there all night and teach them. And because ultimately, after that 6 months they're going, if they were late, everyone knows the time. Don't be fucking late. That was my thing. The minor things that I know you can do. But if you've got a problem with something that's difficult, sit there all night, no problem. So I'd like to think that anyone that went through with me as their instructor, they might have got a bit of a hard time, but they, yeah, I wouldn't let them finish that and then deploy to Afghan potentially months later and not be ready. Which, considering as well, that again, don't know if this is statistically fact, but it's something I heard when I was still in. The average numeracy and literacy skills of someone joining the infantry is age 11, the equivalent of an 11-year-old. So yeah, we're looking at 16, 17, 18-year-old lads, but not really. It's a difficult one to kind of see.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes
Mm.
sense. It does make a lot of sense, and it's like, yeah, I can see you being a good teacher, a good instructor. I mean, however you look at that, actually, because
Mm.
I mean that sincerely. Because
Yeah.
you have the compassion, you have the sort of fair but firm, and all of this, the right balance.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I'm not just saying that. I mean, I can see you being a good sort of mentor to these. So obviously, okay, so these are some things that you witnessed, and some crazy stories. Now, one of the things that people want to know, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this, is obviously the recovery aspect of coming out. Now, before we get to that, I do want to touch on one, which is the mental aspect of what you're doing. Now, it takes bravery, it takes courage, it takes mental strength, fortitude. There's all different words you can use.
Yeah.
Stuff. Is that something you feel that you were kind of born with, or something that you inherently have? Or is that something you feel that the army kind of built up within you like a muscle, like training any other part of you?
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
There's definitely a combination, I say. So there's people that I've seen like heroic acts, and that's just intrinsic. It can be brought on one way or the other. So you might have someone who, I'll use as an example, like turn up, who is an absolute nightmare to train initially, and you think this person is not going to finish, but they adapt to that discipline, and it just evolves them. It's like they were born, they just never had it, and then as soon as they have it, they flourish. But then on the other hand, you might have someone who starts, who seems really disciplined and bang on, but then weeks in, they'll pile the other way. And it's a strange one. There's no way of like calling a predictor on it. I've seen guys who I think are going to be awful have become fantastic soldiers. I've seen guys who I think are going to be fantastic become awful soldiers. And it all comes down to like, this is each personality will adapt differently, and that's to discipline, to heroism, whatever, things like that, fortitude. And you either build it up or you don't. And a lot of it comes down to environment, but it's nurturing a seed, really. Whatever that seed is going to grow into, whatever way you nurture it, in a sense. If that answers it, kind of, in a broad way.
Oh no, it answers it a lot. It answers it a whole lot, because obviously then you've got to have that fortitude as well, in terms of your recovery, and obviously we're going to get into a couple of things with
Yeah.
that. Because first of all, I do want to touch on something here, and I want to break down a stigma and a misunderstanding, whatever you want to call it, where things in the media portray things in a dramatized way. So there's portrayal,
Okay.
PTSD and things like this. When I speak to people, it's not like that. And what I'm actually going to ask you, and I hope this is not
Yeah,
too
go for it.
much of a raw thing, but it's just when you have like a PTSD, whatever you want to call it, flashback, or you have that experience of, I mean, I'm aware it's usually more than a flashback, but when you have that, what actually happens? And for anyone who hasn't had it, what is it actually like in terms of, you don't have to go into details of
No, yeah. So
experience.
this is the thing where this is part down to media again. PTSD is or all these things are portrayed as you wake up, you're on the floor, rolling around, whatever, like you're screaming, things like that, which does happen. But I'd say in my experience, they've now come out with complex PTSD and they've labelled it. But in my experience, it was massive depression, huge survivor's guilt, like guilty about actions, guilty about inaction, guilty about anything. And coming back, anytime you're not living your perfect life, you look at someone and you're like, they died and they could be doing so much better than me. They had a family, they deserve to live, I didn't. Like, it even it extends to your whole life. You feel so undeserving. So for me, it wasn't so much like attacks. I blanked out a hell of a lot. Like things I know that happened, but I can't see myself there anymore. There's a lot of blank spaces, which I've been in therapy, I've been in counselling, things like that. But there's some stuff I'm like, I don't want to know because some of the stuff I do know I don't like. So like if it's there, it can kind of go. But I'd say more struggle with actually coming back, being unsure where they belong, like suffering with deep depression and not feeling worthy and not, but then putting on that front and that face. I see that a hell of a lot. So for me, it was never really been like, yeah, I jump in my sleep, react to a bang. Still like my partner now is even next to me, and I'll just be like the odd night, not nowhere near as much as it was, but I'll be like jumping out, just waking up to it. But again, I then have no memory of what I've just dreamt, kind of thing. So it's kind of like a bit of not sleep apnea almost. Like you stop breathing, you like wake up, and yes, a bit one of those moments. Like sleep paralysis, I don't know if that's a common thing with it either, but like there's been a few times of that as well. Like again, less and less frequent as time goes on, to the point where I can't remember last time I had it now. But I'd say that's more my experience. The the depressed side, the sad side, the unworthiness, the undeserving. Like you almost sabotage yourself to punish yourself for things you've like done, and it's crazy. Like you'll end relationships or you'll react and leaving that testosterone fueled environment as well. You're a different person. Like I came out an angry person, like ridiculous. Like part bitterness because obviously I was like at my back. Then they didn't really seem to care, and that's the common thing as well. So when I left with a very bitter taste in my mouth personally. Despite if you ask anyone else over, they'd be like, "John was rigid. He loved it," and I did until I didn't. It's like a flip of a coin.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Actually, I do get what you mean. But yeah, I mean, the PTSD side of things. I mean, it's definitely. I've heard a lot of the misconceptions. An entirely different way to do with the army and stuff. By the way, I do actually know what it's like because of some stuff with my childhood and some other things. But it kind of it manifests differently. But I was having a conversation with a really good mate of mine about this the other day, and he was telling me about like in Afghan. He was telling me about like weird things that people don't usually explain, where there's like mist in the mornings or something. He was saying
Yeah,
like when you would get up now, you would see like a mist, or you would see certain colors and certain textures and things, and it wouldn't be like a flashback of like a shooting or
yeah,
that or the other, but it would just be like little things that you'd never think of. And he told me a story where he didn't even know he had this, and he was driving somewhere because he's also a Welsh fella like me. And he was driving somewhere in Swansea, I think, and he ran over a chicken, believe it or not, on the road. Yeah,
yeah,
sounds stupid. And he got out on that bother, but like the smell of the blood and stuff, and he
yeah,
over then brought it back, but like he didn't even know he had it to that degree, if you get what I mean.
yeah. Of course, yeah,
Some of these stories, and I was thinking, wow, like, this really takes different forms for different people. And I feel very strongly about that because a lot of things, and even nothing to do with PTSD, you look at autism, you look,
Mhm.
I know a lot of people with that, and you look at
Yeah.
schizophrenia. I got an uncle who suffers with schizophrenia. You see the portrayals in the media. It is nothing like what a lot of
Oh,
people.
no,
So, I feel strongly about kind of breaking down those
of
things.
course.
In terms of some of the ways that you've recovered, though, mate, I mean, and I did say at the beginning, I think this is going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
I'm not putting you on a pedestal, but at the same time, it is amazingly brave to, face this type of stuff, like what you're saying, the unworthiness, survivors feeling not worthy, and all this sort of stuff. So to take some steps where, you're living a good life. I mean, you're up there now with your beautiful view and your place, and you've got your
Mhm.
partner, you've got, some nice things going on.
Yeah.
Some of the steps that you took that actually worked to help you just
So,
healing and everything,
so I didn't really get to the edge. Like a lot of people do get to the edge. Like I luckily didn't like really lose connection with family as such. I lost trust there. So I went down a big spiral really. After a while, as anger, steroids, gym was my addiction at one point. When that fell off, I turned to cocaine and I became heavily addicted to that. I was at one point I was on it daily for months. And it started getting counterproductive. Eventually it's obviously all kind of come out in the wash. And then I went to rehab actually, and just even though cocaine is not the same kind of addiction as that, but to have that 28 days clear was just like got me away from it for that time. It was like being in a military room again in a way. You're back in your room, you've got your little sanitized area. So really that was the first step, like just sitting going, I've got some fucking issues kind of thing, and sitting there and saying that and admitting it to yourself. And like it doesn't matter what anyone else is saying, if you aren't ready to handle it, you're not ready to handle it. Like so you have to, that's the first step in anything. Just take an honest review of yourself, like what you're doing to yourself, what are you doing to everyone around you, and then kind of start taking steps forward. And it's not going to be one of those things where you take step forward, step forward. It's going to be three forward, three might be three back. You might be back in the same boat. Like there's so many things, but realistically, like I end up in stressful long hour jobs and stuff like that, close protection, bits and bobs like that, and or like I went out to Sierra Leone, that was beautiful, loved that, but then that fell through, and then like you could take a few steps forward, and then just something just knocked you for six, like, and it depends on what you've got in your cup. I mean, it might be a small thing in overall, but if your cup's full, that small things will make it overflow. So like, you need to keep that in mind and don't play down the fact that right, it's only small, it's only minor. But if that's the minor last drop, like last straw on the camel's back kind of thing, it doesn't matter if it's minor to anyone else. That's the thing that's finished you. So it's kind of like address the root cause if you can. Um, by so again, the drugs, for instance, that was like that took one thing out the one big thing that took a big thing out the basket kind of thing there. So, but the addiction wasn't for me. I don't think personally a disease. It was a symptom of disease, a symptom of deeper things that were bothering me that I was masking using that. So I'd say if it's drugs, cut it. You need to try and cut it out. If it's anything else, you need to try and cut out the things that aren't helping you just day by day. Just like I've got a little book here that I wrote quotes, and every time I saw like an inspirational quote or something that meant something, just write it down, just read it. Like affirmations, I don't fully invest in them, but sometimes, like if you're feeling unworthy, just I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, and just drill that into yourself. Particularly as someone from the army, you're used to repetition to learn, so do that with positive things. And that's really sort of the main little steps. Just do that every day, and it gets better.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's powerful, man. People don't realize what you're saying there, but affirmation,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, yeah, I also think a lot of times people overlook things like you're saying about repetition because it's so, personally, I do a lot with like the breathing stuff as well, and it can
Yeah,
look at like, meditation, like you have to sit there and you have to do it. And it's like you don't. I mean, a lot of times I do it as
yeah,
I'm walking and as I'm, as I'm like going into a meeting, like just before and things like that. And it's like, well, if you think about your emotions, you get angry, you get worried, you get do it. I mean,
yeah.
your breathing changes. And I know you're used to training people, so that's bound to come into certain aspects of what they do. And but then people look at that and if you go, no, that's too simple, it would never work. And I think, well, no, I mean, you went through however many years of schooling.
Mm.
Nobody taught you
Yeah,
there, you just breathe. Nobody taught you how to.
yeah,
When I started personally now, I'm just saying, correcting that,
Mhm.
like, controlling my breath rather than it controlling me. It made like a
Yeah.
but it takes a lot. It's like not an overnight thing. The affirmations
That's definitely not.
do as well. Like you're saying, you take it, you slip up, then you think,
Mm.
oh, I'm supposed to be doing that, and and it takes that time, but it does work. And
Yeah,
also talking about like a book and writing stuff down. I saw something on Facebook, and I saw some things about like a children's book and something you're doing. Um,
yeah,
I'm going off on a tangent here, but
yeah.
a
Go for it.
short-term thing, a memory. I don't want to forget this.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's awesome. What inspired you to write a children's book, and what is it that's actually the story
To be
there?
fair, I just sort of randomly just thought of it one day. Thought of it one day, like how the robin got his red breast, and I just kind of started rhyming, and I just put it together. Really, I wrote it very quickly. Really, it just flowed straight out of me. And then I've had it a while. Really, I just kind of sat on it, And it's now I'm at a stage where I can bring that in without overflowing my cup. Like it's been sat there, I can bring that in without overflowing and push for an illustrator. So now I've got like illustrators on it now. So I was ideally going to try and smash it out for this Christmas, but that's unrealistic now. It's not going to be done in time. But by next one, 100%. So that's when I've got another little project on the go that's like more military based and stuff with the trauma and stuff after it, like short stories from the long war. It's all just shorts, but all the way through from start to finish. And the war doesn't end when you're home, it carries on then after. So yeah, that's another little project I've got on the go at the minute. Just to keep myself busy. Idle hands do the devil's work sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? I mean, the other call I was on earlier said exactly the same thing. Idle has funny that, but it is true. And I'll tell you what, I think it's amazing. And do you want to know the other thing as well? By the way, yeah, creativity, getting in touch with your feelings, all that type of concept. I
Yeah,
think I think is absolutely brilliant because I mean, it comes in all different forms for different people and everything.
yeah,
But it's amazing how much healing I've done through doing these, just from
yeah, yeah,
painting a picture with the conversation. Uh,
yeah.
People, it can be something completely different. I know people who can paint and do them, and it's like I try and for toffee, I
Oh,
can't.
I'm all for I'm terrible at painting.
I can write stuff, and like I can
Yeah,
speak, I can write stuff, and I can write it down, and it just flows. And it's like I think that creative process as well isn't. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, I also think it's really cool because even though it sounds like a cliche, obviously you said about the anger, testosterone
mhm.
environment. I mean, obviously that's a long way from being conscious of like how you
Yeah,
feel and sort of letting it out and in a constructive manner, mind. I mean, because
yeah,
I'm
of
not a fan of
course, yeah,
this, like American, where you have like people crying on TV and people being really
yeah,
not a fan of that, but I'm saying if you're getting it out in like a more channeled, constructive manner, it needs to come out. It doesn't come in because, as you well know, if it stays inside of you and you don't get it out, it just comes out in a different way anyway. Hence,
yeah,
anger. So, I mean, I also think for people that's a really good lesson, which leads me to obviously some of your advice for people who are struggling. You've kind of illustrated that with your own story a bit, but I want to go deeper into people at different stages are going through something similar to what you went through. I mean, what would you say to them if they're listening to this and if they feel like they're alone in that situation?
like don't make yourself more alone. In a sense, because a lot of people are again, if anything like me, push everyone away because you feel you're undeserving of having them there, then feel alone. But also be selective of who you've got in your life. Don't just let anyone in. Like start being very picky. Like do it. I said there a real audit. Sit there and like I think it's only something daft that Ashley Kane said or something is like, is that serving me? No, gone. Is this serving me? Yes, stays. Or like find just a simple thing, like not necessarily a mantra, it could be a song, it could be a thing like to latch onto that you relate to. So again, when I'm sort of at my darkest, there's a Tyson Fury. It's like 11 minutes on his YouTube, and it's like it's just a bit of him talking with a bit of tunes behind it, and he's basically saying when he went downhill, and then when he's at a Halloween party, and I was dressed as a skeleton, and then I thought today's the day I turned my life around. I went running for 2 miles. He went running for like 2 miles. He said I got 200 meters, and I was fucked. And I remember the same thing when I come off coke. I like went, I'm going to run a bit. And I went and I got 200 meters and I was being sick. I was like heaving because obviously all this was just blocked with God knows what. And that, so just find something. It could be a simple thing, a song, a word, a phrase, anything. Just latch onto it. If it makes you feel better, and play it over and over again. I must have played that, I don't know, hundreds of times. As well as what's another song? Outnumbered, Dermot Kennedy. Because I always felt alone and outnumbered. It's like play that, let it like go deep and just yeah. So the simplest thing for you to latch on, that's the first step. Find something simple to latch onto that means something to you that pushes you in the right direction. After that, it's really action. But forgive yourself when it doesn't work out the first time. Like if you say again, we'll use drugs as an easy one. So you do cocaine Monday through Sunday. Then the next week you don't do it Saturday, but you do it Sunday. Instead of beating yourself up on Sunday for that thing, right? I didn't do it Saturday, and then the next week don't do it Friday and Saturday. Shit, you know what I mean? And that could happen over months. But the fact is, you're doing it right. Then don't. And that's I'm the worst for that self-criticism. You're worst, your own worst critic, and I will annihilate myself. I could climb Mount Everest, but then if I did a line after it, I'll be like, "You fucking reprobate." It's like celebrate your wins if you can. It's tough. Like, I still don't really do it, but try and like forgive yourself if you've made the slightest bit of progress. Accept that's progress, and then try and do it again the next week with a little bit more.
Yeah, that's solid. That is solid advice. Yeah, perfection doesn't exist, does it? I mean, at the end of the day, there is no such people can aim for it, and Yeah, and also what you just going back to what you said earlier about the drugs being symptom of a much deeper.
Mhm.
I think that is powerful because I know a lot of people, and it's not no disrespect to anybody, where they've quit, drinking drugs or whatever and all this type of stuff, but then the deeper issue is still there. So then
Yeah,
it manifests in a different way. And I think that then, you get that out the way, you find what's underneath. Tyson Fury as well. I mean, what an inspiring fella. I mean,
oh,
I
yeah, massively.
about him, but that shows the power of vulnerability, really in a similar way to you, because you're looking at a guy like, okay, he's tough as they come, and he's a traditional sort of, masculine person
Mhm.
like yourself. But then at the same time, he's also in touch with like the other side, the feelings and some of the things you have to be in touch with to be healthy, I think.
Yeah,
And there's another one for me that does it, where he's talking about driving, on I think it's like a bridge, he's going to drive off the bridge and everything.
yeah, yeah.
And he was saying like, he thought of what his children would say and
Mhm.
say if their father commits and all this. And I remember hearing to that in my own roles.
Yeah,
I've met Tyson a few times as well, and he's just in person. He's just as
yeah, forward.
all this stuff, and I was thinking, wow, like I mean that shows a much bigger perspective of
Yeah,
how this would affect other people if you go there.
yeah.
And
That's another one that related to me as well, the bridge thing, 'cause I've done that as well. Like driving down to London to work, every bridge I'm like, just do it. Just do it. But it's, yeah, and this is, I'll be fully honest, and this is harsh to say because it's like everyone has their own things. But the worst thing you can do for a child is do it. If you have got kids, I know you seem hopeless and I know you seem shit, but no matter what you do, that's going to affect them more than anything you ever do alive.
absolutely, yeah.
I'm not saying anyone's fucking wrong for completing suicide, because it's not a crime, but so you don't commit it. But like at the same time, yeah, they're not. That's the worst thing you can do for them. Like it's been times when animals have just been like, I've had my dogs or my cat, and I've been like, thank fuck they're there. But like my son, he's just looking like, no matter how I feel, can't. And if it takes someone else to keep you alive for a while until you feel like you can yourself, then so be it.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
that's just fine that reason.
I mean, that's what I mean personally. My side of it, that's what happened. But I will also say as well, yeah. I mean, if you need that lifeline, there's no shame in that. And I also flip this on its head just from my own experience, which some people find controversial. But I always say that actually, if someone has got the courage to actually go through
Oh,
that, you've definitely got the courage. Because it does take courage, by the way, not
of
cowardice
course, yeah.
at the same time, then if you've got the courage to do that, you've got the courage to talk about it as well. Because actually,
Yeah.
talking about it, regardless of what they say, is actually easier. And I haven't really heard anybody say that, but I just say it myself.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, definitely. If you've got courage to go one way, you should have the courage to go the other.
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
like, in my experience, you almost convince yourself. So this is kind of the alone thing. You sit there, and if you're in that, I like being alone. I like my own space now because I can enjoy it and I can be in it, and be a bit more present. But before, when I was sat there just berating myself, and that's what gets you. You feel like you're so worthless that the best thing you convince yourself that the best thing you can do is to do it. The best thing for everyone is if I'm not here, and that's never true. That's never a fact. Like it's not. There's someone out there who gives a shit, who's
Absolutely.
just going to be devastated. That like, what's the little saying? I'd rather answer your phone call than attend your funeral or something like that. Yeah,
It's shocking. I mean, when it does happen as well. I mean, I've had a few mates in the past. Earlier this year, I had a really good mate, funny enough, who also served, and he was also a fighter as well. And he was like the last person, cross protection. I heard you say about that. He was doing all that side of things. And you see the social media posts, and when I have a chat with him and all this sort of stuff, the confidence is there. And then you hear the thing that he's gone, and
it's sad.
you think, of all the people I would have thought in all the world, like, then you think, oh, could I have said something more? What could I have said? But it has a deep effect. And then I saw the post of like his mum, and the people he left, after, and I think, bloody hell,
Yeah.
and again, the media, they don't show that as much that, they show very authentic portrayal. The other thing though, that I think is really cool with you, mate, and we've gone the last couple of topics,
Mhm. Yeah.
but unworthiness and everything, and then you let like love into your life. You're in a relationship and all this type of thing. Now, I don't want to go too much into anything kind of personal there, but what I am saying is being in a position of letting somebody close to you when you've had those barriers around. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that defines your journey, because obviously this journey is an inner journey that we're talking about here. So it's
Yeah.
you, like you versus you in a lot of ways, and it's not actually. That's the irony, is you are actually
Yeah.
worthy of living, and you're actually a good person, but then, and all these things, but then convincing yourself of it, and I know what it feels like in a different way. But then obviously accepting something like being in a relationship and thinking, actually, I can receive love to a degree is kind of a massive step from
Yeah, it's huge.
that process. And I am curious to go into that topic a little bit, not to get into anything
Yeah, yeah.
personal about you and Neil, but like how you were able to do it.
So you've got to take a gamble. Really, it's like, but I also kind of believe that the universe sends stuff at the right time. Sometimes you like attract things. So so this is the August. I'd been to rehab. I'd come out. I'd got a good job. I'd got a nice apartment. When that happened, I got this place expecting to be a bachelor pad. I'm like, hey girls, yeah, whatever. 10 days later, met her.
Yeah.
If I'd not been in that place, I would not have drawn that to me. If she'd have got me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it would not have worked. So that was that. But you've got to go in on a gamble and kind of go, you know what? I'm just going to be me. Like I did say it when we got together. I was like, this is the worst of me. This is the best of me. These are the things. Like you accept that early on because there's no point you finding anything out 6 months down the line and that being a problem. So that's that full honesty of your open audit. She knew everything, like the rehab, everything. She knew all about it before we then committed. But then it's also going to hurt. So like you open that emotional flood, that emotional doorway, but you've got to commit to giving that person that. If they can't handle that or react to it or respond to it wrongly, you can't really judge them for it because it is a lot. But then you almost got to commit to. So I committed really to just coming out and being like, right, I'll be fully open, I'll be honest, and we'll go from there. And then there's been moments where it's like been a bit too much with my emotions or a bit too much of this. So then you just pull it back a little bit. But you've got to at least try and just throw that trust out there. If you need to retreat a little bit to then advance again later, fine. But you need to like throw all your cards in really. And then at least say it all did fail and all went downhill. You've been honest, you've been you. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a massive one, and it's another thing that stands out to me. I mean, I just simply put when you post and everything, and I just think, man, I'm happy for you guys because of everything in general. I would be for anybody
Yeah,
what you've been through, and then what you were saying there about the whole bachelor thing and all that. I mean, yeah, I would say in a lot of ways that's another way of, as men, that's another way of we kind of avoid
yeah,
actual proper intimacy and all this type of stuff. Listen, people can live how they want. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm not telling people how they live, but
yeah.
most of the guys I know, and even to some extent in my own life, where you've been into that a lot, it's actually just a way. It's like another kind of like another.
Yeah, it's a coping. Like it's abusing yourself in a way as well. Like as much as anything else. Like fighting, you mentioned fighters. A lot
Yeah.
of fighters do this like complete suicide. That's a big one, and it's like almost comes back to the getting in that ring. They're fighting themselves in that ring. They're like getting hit. It's part of them punishing themselves. Some of them, and I know a few myself, and it's not always as clear cut and simple as you look at and you see. It's there's a lot behind it.
The motives behind it are crazy. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like even if you look at that with fighters as an example, you can have two guys in there, even if they're fighting each other, but they're on totally different.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
You can have one guy in there because like his dad was a boxer or whatever, and he wants to impress his dad, or his dad forced him to do it or whatever. And then you can have another guy on the other side where it's like something like we're talking about, addiction, trauma. He's trying to
Yeah,
work his way through it, and then you get some guys where it's like the fitness, and they're almost fighting almost as like a default where
yeah,
it's like the thing on the top of actually they just want to get really really fit because the endorphins help with whatever they're going through, and
definitely. Yeah,
on there. So there's like, and so you can't really look at it and say, okay, and I know some guys where it's like anger and it is more, they've been in prison, they've been whatever, they come out, right, I want to go back there, I need to channel this constructively. But then
yeah,
that's also a stereotype as well. And there's actually a lot of other reasons why. So that's one of the things I try and do is, people have stereotypes of people, in any walk of life, people have been in the army, people have done this, people have done that. So that's one of the things I hope that we've done today is break down that.
definitely. Yeah.
You've definitely got the whole yin and yang, that the both sides, and I mean that as a compliment,
Thanks, man.
because it takes more courage to do that than it takes staying just in the masculine. But
Mhm.
right, I'm going to deal with this, and it's linear, and it's cut and dry, and it's this way and this way. But how I feel about it doesn't really come into it. It's like no, actually, when you start bringing some of that into it, that's
Yeah,
emotions and stuff. That's the hard bit to navigate. That's the bit that like.
yes.
I mean, that's the left brain, is actually, I would say, quite a safe space in a lot of
Mhm.
situations. Which again, I've never really heard people say, but I just say it because it's like, well, actually, you've got a cut and dry, like it's going to go this way, this way. When you start bringing the heart into it, but I'm not into a lot of the kooky stuff, but I have gone as far as to getting into a degree of some of the energy stuff to the point where it's like, I'm aware that, for example, some of these traumas are trapped in our muscles, right? So it's like
Yeah,
you have tension in a certain part of your body, and I've come into the science of like actually that's that's an emotion that's actually
Yeah.
locked in. So as you try and not feel it subconsciously, that part of your body actually tenses and like locks it down. So then I've come at this the other way where everybody comes out from the mind and like I did hypnosis.
Yeah.
But then you can also come at it from the body because then if somebody's like doing some work on your body, like releasing, even just like massaging and releasing the tension, you'd be weirdly surprised.
Yeah.
An emotion will come out from that, and you've probably had this, and you think, what was that? I mean, where was that?
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of it, which is why I find the whole stereotype of like the muscle bound individual quite fascinating because then I think there's a lot of repressed emotion.
Thanks. Yeah. It's like I think everyone is going to have a different way. And that's the thing, like you're saying about meditation. I've tried meditation, I believe in it within reason, but I'm not ready for it because I'll sit there and let the mind wander. As soon as my mind wanders, I'm like, you fucking idiot, you can't even sit still. Like that. So that didn't work for me because I pull myself back and put it in, have a go at myself for it. But if you can get past that, then like that, meditation, it works for you. It doesn't for me right now. But then that, again, a massage work for one. I feel it. There's so many ways out there. Find the ways that work for you.
That's it, man. Be
Doesn't matter
individual.
what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, like I say, so I know some people write poems and some people make music, and it's like it doesn't matter. And yeah, for me, I do a bit of that, like the sitting meditation type of thing, a bit, but I don't do
Yeah.
much of what people think. I do it more, like I was saying, as I'm in an action. So then what
Yeah. Yeah.
I have like the opposite thing where it's like, okay, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, and then I'm having like the thoughts and things popping into my head that I don't
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just right here, right now, type of thing.
Mm.
But I'm still doing something. Whereas I find
Yeah.
some days I sit down to meditate, it can be very peaceful. It's helped me to focus my mind. But some days it's agitating. Some days
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
and it's just you actually get less calm and you actually get a flood of like
Yeah. And that's what you say again, though. It comes back to that's okay.
yeah.
Today it worked. Tomorrow it doesn't. It's all right. Don't focus on the day it didn't work. Focus on, right, well, it worked on the day. I'll try it again. But it worked today. It's not going to work every day. It's not
Yeah.
going to be. It's not going to be all roses. Just know that. But doing that those 2 days is like, well, I've done it. I've done that. It's
Yeah.
simple things.
It's amazing what you said there, though, because we live in an era as well, I think, of sort of false perfection. I mean, we live in an where obviously social media, I mean, it does have a good side, I'm not going to say, but it obviously does have the downside of, people seeing their highlights and stuff. But then at the same time, you've got general pressure. Like, you look at something like, I don't know, a weird example, like the Forbes 30 under 30 type of concept, you look at something like that where it's sending people a message, okay, you should have everything figured out by the time you're 30.
Yeah.
How,
Yeah.
how many people do you know who have it all figured out by then? So it's like, well, okay, so I think that the idea of what you're saying there of breaking down perfection in whatever form, I think is fantastic. I got to ask you, though, as one of the last things, are you going to write a book at any point, even if it's in the future, or write any more? Because you were saying about doing the short stories and things with.
Yeah.
Are you going to write like more biography type stuff about yourself?
Yeah, that's kind of going to be it's like I said, short stories from the long war. So it is going to be instead of it being one continuous read, it's just going to be like so. I've only literally briefly started it, but it's like so. The first page, for instance, now is when I first landed in Afghanistan. For instance, I remember getting off like an 18-year-old boy. I remember getting off the back of this like Hercules and got the big engines and it's blowing out heat, and I'm like, oh, that's hot. Oh, those engines are hot. And as I got further and further away, I was like, that's not the engines. I mean, that's just the heat of the place. And that's just like one sort of short extract about that. But then the next one will be what this is like, what's that's like. So it is going to be kind of a day in the life in a sense. So it is going to be a biography, but not really read like one. So you don't have to commit to going right. So that's how that day felt. That's how that it might skip a week. It might be not happening. It might skip 2 weeks. But ultimately, I wanted to include start to finish and the finish being today, realistically. In essence, so like it doesn't end when it ends, in a sense.
Yeah, I love that because I mean, I know you're the type of person as well where this isn't necessarily something that you kind of set out to say, like, look, I'm going to be on a podcast, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Not really, do you know what I'm saying? And I'm making that clear for our viewers. But at the same time, I also think it's a very powerful position because even though at this point in your life, I mean, you've got to look after yourself first, and that's the most important thing. Also, the way of inspiring people, hence the name of my channel, and getting that message out there and all this type of stuff. And it sounds like a cliche, and I've been through it, and I thought, you know what? I mean, we put all this stuff out there. The internet's like awash with motivational stuff. I mean, does it really help people? Is it just oversaturated? What's the deal with that? But then you always hear of like connects with people at the right time. It definitely does. Like what you were saying about Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
if he hadn't have said that, I mean, it wouldn't have helped you, and it wouldn't have helped lots.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, and if he did, and if he'd have kept to the pride of like, oh, I'm like he's a gypsy king, I don't need to say this type of stuff. But luckily, he broke through that pride, and it's like it's the same thing with yourself. Not so much with pride, but with like embracing vulnerability, where you're putting this out there. And I know that's still a fragile thing in a lot of ways, but it's immensely valuable. And I hope you realize that. Even on the flip side, even what I said earlier, even something like, you post a photo with the missus or whatever, and somebody's looking at that thinking, wow, somebody can accept
Yeah.
love. By the way, that was one for me as well, because I saw that, I thought, wow, you can get to a point where you can fully accept it, because I can give it better than I can
Yeah, I'm saying.
it, do you know what I mean? And all that. So I thought, wow, okay, that's something. And then I've been in relationships, you struggle to, I can give it a lot. Like a lot of times they'll say more than like what they've had before. And they'll say,
Yeah.
oh, I'm more in tune with them, their feelings, and I know what, and all this type of stuff. But then they try and give it to me, and I'm like, oh, and I,
Yeah, so yeah. Like I can't accept gifts still.
yeah,
Christmas, no one. I'm like, do not give me anything because it's for nothing. So I feel like I have to earn it. And that
exactly.
still will be to this day. That'll be probably forever. I don't know where it's really come from, but something as simple as that.
Weird, isn't it? I
It
mean,
makes me feel awkward as hell. Like if I'm at someone's for Christmas dinner and someone's like, "Oh, here's this," I'm like, "Ah, thank you." It's very awkward.
there you go. I mean, I relate 110%, and I used to have it with compliments. I couldn't take it. I can take a compliment now, but the only thing is, I have found that also does go back to childhood as well. So it's like even with yourself, I think that there's definitely will be elements, and you probably know this, of like even before the military. But I mean, you're making like massive progress, and I mean, it's a journey, man. It's not a destination. It's just a journey.
Definitely is. Yeah, I'm
Um,
not there. I'm not there yet. Definitely not.
I don't know anyone who's there. I just
No,
don't.
no, me neither.
Further along the path. And obviously, you do get, people do get to a point where they have the kind of level of happiness that they want.
Yeah.
Then again, the last thing I'm going to say before I go is I flip that on its head too, because I've learned in life that happiness really is very dependable on our
Mm.
circumstances. And it's like when you're on the right track in life, you start feeling joy, I mean, and people say to me sometimes, like, like me coming to Cyprus, why Cyprus, why not somewhere else? I'm saying, well, it's very hard to explain because when I'm here, I feel more joy than
Yeah, of
not all the time, because people think it's like
course, yeah.
a permanent holiday. I mean, there's been some of the best times and the worst times of my life, but I also feel a sense of joy that I never felt in the UK.
Yeah.
So you kind of know. But then if I was measuring that by how often I'm happy, it wouldn't necessarily be a different thing. 'Cause it's like, yeah, I'm happy sometimes, but it's like it's very dependable on like, it's a sunny day. Today I woke up in Cyprus. It's a cloudy day, and it looks like the UK.
Yeah,
That could make me unhappy, but you can't measure it. You got to measure it on the joy.
definitely.
One of the things I saw and felt, even when you were saying about the children's book and stuff, is you had a sense of joy about like
Mm.
that post, and I just thought, man, I'm happy for you, because that's
Thank you, bro.
that's coming home what you actually
All right.
deserve to have. You know,
It's like helping other people as well. Just help other people where you can. Like to feed an animal, for instance, to feed a starving animal is to feed one's own soul.
yeah,
Like do that. If you give a little bit, you'll feel a little bit. And there's a lot. Like I think Tony Robbins again, he says something about it. But it's just give something, and you'll get something out of it. Like it won't be tangible, but you'll feel it.
absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. And I will say, I mean, you might not be able to take it like you can't take a gift, but you definitely do deserve to be happy,
Thank you.
and there will be the day when you can see it fully and feel it, and you deserve to be joyful, and all those good things, and
I'll keep you updated.
yeah, keep me.
Yeah,
Can always do a part two when you've got the books out there and
definitely.
that type of stuff. But today, thank you so much just for speaking from here, and
Thank you, brother. I'm glad to be here.
thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.